Welcome to Windy Hills Studio. My name is Bob Rogers, and I'm a freelance photographer and writer located in Custer, Wisconsin in the USA. Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to show you how I photographed a miniature orchid using relatively simple setup that you could modify to suit your own needs for photographing flowers indoors. It's the second week of April 2020, and where I live in the United States, we are still practicing social distancing, only traveling outside home to get essential items like food and medicine. About a year ago, I was indoors because of a very nasty weather system, cold, and snow, and wind outside. Actually, today is pretty much like that. But I wanted to do some photography with my Nikon Z6 or Z6 that I recently purchased. I was looking for a subject to photograph. I spied my wife's miniature orchid, and I asked her if I could borrow it for a while. The little orchid had such beautiful flowers that I wanted to capture its ethereal beauty. At least it was beautiful to me. So I set up my little studio and made some images. About the time I made the images, Darrell put out a call on Nikonians, which is an online forum of Nikon users, for photographs he could use in a new book he was writing about mastering the Nikon Z6. I submitted the miniature orchid image, and it was one of several selected to be included in the book. Here is that original image. So I thought now would be a good time to share a video about how I made the image. Perhaps it will give you some ideas about how you can have some fun making your setup to make images of flowers indoors. So, let's get started. Please disregard all the video equipment. My goal was to make a soft-looking ethereal image of the orchid flowers. So, here's how I set up for the shot. I used a whiteboard or white foam board over here for the background and also for the bottom here. Any whiteboard or even a white cloth drape over boxes to form a background will do. I used 2 floor lamps and a Lume Cube for my lighting setup. The floor lamps are fitted with daylight energy saving bulbs. I placed them on either side of the orchid, about 2 feet away and about 1 foot above. The Lume Cube was placed at the same level as the orchid, about 9 inches away and at a 45-degree angle off to the side of the camera. I set up the lighting this way so as to have relatively uniform light across the scene with no harsh shadows. I wanted to use the side lights and also light bouncing from the background and the floor to enhance the detail in the designs in the petals. The front light from the Lume Cube lighted up the petals to make them translucent and to accentuate the design in the petals. I positioned the camera on a tripod about 16 inches away from the orchid and angled the orchid to have as much of the flowers in the frame while excluding the leaves. I set the focal length of the lens as far as I could zoom, which was 70 millimeters. I also set ISO to the base of the Z6, which is 100. I set the f-stop to f16. At this close distance, I needed to extend depth of field. I did not need extreme sharpness because I did want the orchid flowers to be soft anyway. Had I wanted everything to be sharply in focus, I could have used focus stacking. I turned on the lights and played with them until I liked what I saw. I then adjusted shutter speed to give me an exposure that was about 1/3 stop overexposed, according to the histogram. I figured this would give me a light gray background, which I could adjust in post if I wanted. Here are the camera settings for this image. I use back button focus to set the focus on the center of the flower. I set the timer for 10 seconds. And I took the shot. Next, I will describe how I processed the image. Okay, we're in Capture 1. I've already loaded the image from the orchid photo shoot. And now it's time to begin editing this image. The first thing that I'm going to do is to crop the image. And I think I'm going to crop it 1:1, that is square. One of the reasons why I want to crop this is because I want to get rid of the jar that's on the left-hand side here. All I want to do is have the flowers and the stem. So I'm going to click the down arrow here and make sure that square is selected. And then I am going to left click on the crop tool. And you can see the corners have already appeared. And so I'm going to bring the image up from the bottom, and as soon as I do, it performs the square crop. Remember, I took the image in a vertical format. So I'm going to reposition this, paying mind to the rule of thirds squares here. And I'm also going to want to put the stem here so that it is coming from the bottom left hand corner here as a line going up. And I'm going to even the left and right sides just a little bit. Now when I took the shot, I already knew that I wanted to and that I was going to crop the image. So this is not a surprise. So that looks pretty good. So when I hit the hand key here, or the H key, I bring up the cropped image. The next thing I want to do is take a look at the colors, and one of the things that I do in a normal workflow is to go over to my levels panel here. This would be right here. And I just do an automatic adjustment, which is this little tool right here. So this auto adjusts the colors here. So I'm going to click left. One of the things that you notice is that it automatically brightened the image. Just to give you an idea, this is currently the way it looks. This is what we started with. So by using the auto adjust features on the levels panel, we wind up with a much brighter image. Now, in fact, this is pretty much the kind of background that I am interested in, because I don't want a completely white background, because what that will do is it will blend in with the white of the orchid flowers, and I don't want that to happen. The next thing I think I will do is I'm going to create a fill mask, and the reason for that is that I want the orchid flowers to have a soft look to them. It's not too bad right now. I mean, even as we take a look at this, it's not a bad image. One thing that's distracting to me anyway is the boldness of the stem coming up here, and also the little tie over here to hold the stem of the orchid together so that it's upright, so it doesn't fall over. So these are too bold for me, and we're going to deal with them a little bit later. But for now, what I want to do is create a mask, and the way I can do that is to go over to the right hand. In my case, I've configured my screen so that the panels are on the right hand side, and this little plus sign here allows me to create a new layer, and I'm going to create a new fill layer. So clicking on that, plus I wind up with a layer here. Clicking right, I open up a dialog box, and one of the things that I can do is do a fill mask. So I'm going to click on that, and so now if I want to see where the mask is, I press the M key on the keyboard, and it's totally blank. In other words, it covers the whole image. So now what I want to do, whatever changes I make will be applied to the entire image, and in fact that's what I want. So I'm going to go down, and I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit on this layer. Not much, just a tiny bit. And so, and if it becomes too much, I can always adjust the opacity here. So maybe that is too much. I'm going to go down just a little bit here, and that seems good to me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the clarity panel here, and the method that I prefer is natural. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clarity slider, and I'm going to push it all the way to the left. When I do that, you'll see that the image blurs out. If I were to go to the right, you see all the way to the right, it accentuates the edges and the detail in the flowers, and that's not what I'm after. So I'm after a soft look, and so I'm going to take the slider down to maybe about here, and I kind of like that. Okay, so I've gotten that look here, and now what I want to do is rod here that's colored green, which is okay. So all I have is the stem of the orchid, right? And of course I could go to an application like Photoshop, and I could get rid of this and so forth, but I don't want to do all that work. And maybe it's not so obtrusive if I were to lighten this and tone this down. In other words, reduce the color in the stem and so forth so that it's not as bold. That's what I'm after. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create another layer. Oh, before I go, let me just rename this layer here, and I'm going to call this reduce clarity, just so that I remember what I have done. And now I'm going to create a new layer. So clicking on the plus, but this time I'm going to do an empty layer. And so if I press the M key to show where the mask is, I just did that and nothing happens because there is no mask yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to brush a mask in, and I'm going to brush it over the stem part here and the stem of the orchid. So to do that, all I have to do is press B on the keyboard, and I wind up with a brush icon. And in order to be a little bit more precise in my brushing, I'm going to zoom in on the image. So if I hold the command key on the Mac and hit the plus key, I zoom in on the image. And I've set the brush, setting the brush, you can set the size, in other words, how big the brush is itself, how hard or soft the edges will be, the opacity, that is the strength of the mask, and the flow. The flow is related to how many strokes it takes to paint in the mask. I've set the inner circle as the place where the mask is going to be laid down, and the outer ring would be the feathering part. So I'm going to turn on the mask so you can see what's happening when I brush in the mask. And I'm going to do this like so. You can see I don't have to worry too much if I go outside. We'll see how we can fix that if we brush outside the stem area. I'm going to increase the exposure here, so for this. So I'm making it lighter. Not being really too careful here. Each time I go over it, I lay down a little bit more. And holding down the space bar, I can reposition the screen. Here I'm going to do quite a bit. And the goal here is to reduce the boldness of the stem here. Okay, I'll take the mask off by pressing. If we want to see if we've made any difference here. So what's the difference? So option and back. This is no edits, and this is our edits that we've done. I think the masking is pretty good. If you think you've gone too far outside the boundary, you can refine the edge of the mask, and one way to do that is to click right and select refine mask. Then if this shows how far out we are willing to go from the mask. If I go all the way left, well, you can see I did a pretty good job because I can't see any difference. So if I were to go out, I could refine the edge a little bit better. But there's one more thing I want to do here, and that is that I want to reduce the saturation of the mask, and that will further dampen down the colors. So this adjustment will only apply to the area that I've masked. So I'm going to bring this down. If I bring it all the way down, you'll see that it really does bring it down quite a bit. To see the difference before, after. Another way of just looking at the effect of toning down the color. We click on here, we turn it off, and you can see it's much bolder. Another thing that I can do is I can go up to the color wheel, and I can select the shadows, and of course this is all the dark areas here. And one of the things I can do here is to reduce or brighten the luminance. And so what happens here, that further dampens the stem. I kind of like the way that looks. If we take a look at all of the changes we've made, this is what we started with. And this is the way it looks now. And I think that's it for my edits. Not much, but nonetheless, I think it looks really good compared to where we started from. So actually the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to output this. Now if we take a look at the output file, the JPEG, I'll go down here, and that's this one here. We'll take a look at it. This is what it looks like. I think it's kind of attractive. I hope you enjoyed this video and find it useful in your own photography. The links to Darrell's book and to the Nikonians website can be found in the section below the video. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell to get notified when a new video is available. Bye for now.